So the next step after you've dyed your edges and everything else that you want to have colored is going to be applying a resist. So I use neat lac because I found other resist can tend to let color seep in a little bit more. Neat lac, I found I get really good results where it keeps color where I want it and stops color from going where I don't want it the best. So it acts more like a true resist than anything I've ever found or used. I apply it with a firm sponge. I don't use sheep's wool at this point or anything, and I want to use something like this because what I'm essentially going to try to do is just get that neat lac on the very top surface of this tooling. I want to try to not get as much of it down into the tooling impressions as possible. That way when I antique it, that antique's going to be able to reach down into those impressions and it's really going to hold a lot of color. That being said, it doesn't always work out perfect. You just want to try your best to just go over the surface of this as light as possible in a way. I usually only let it sit until it's dry to the touch, and then I usually am good to go with antique, especially if you're just using the antique paste. I'm just going to go ahead and get some of this on the sponge. And a little bit really does go a long way with this. So we got some on the sponge here, and I'm just gonna start at one end and kind of not put any pressure, just really trying to only get it on the surface of that tooling. The main reason is because it's a flat surface and it's just gonna keep it on the top of that tooling better than anything else. Say a dauber or something that's gonna allow it to get down into the impressions a little bit more. I found that when you use too much, which a dauber would probably hold a little bit more than the sponge would, it can make bubbles and whatnot. The best way I found to fix that is just keep a paper towel or a sponge or something handy, that if you do get bubbles, you can just quickly kind of wipe them away and spread them out and even them all out again. So following these curves can sometimes be a pain with other groovers, but this one seems to do it pretty easily. And I'm just going to run this down the edge. This thing really does kind of move like butter. It cuts right through here, really smooth. We got our stitch groove put in. We've got this belt resisted, and now we're ready to antique. So my method of doing antique is I use Fubien's antique paste, and I just get it on my hands, and I'm just going to work it into this belt pattern and all the impressions and everything we've made. So you just get some on your hand here, and then we're just going to go ahead and start working that into our pattern. And this is a medium brown antique paste, so we should get a pretty nice brown tone to it. I like the feeling of doing it by hand more than anything else, so it's just part of the process that I really enjoy doing, because this is probably my favorite part of building something, aside from seeing the finished product completely. I really enjoy the coloring part because that's when you really see whether you did a good job tooling or not. Because if you did good, your tooling impressions and everything are going to show up really nice, and you're one step closer to seeing your finished product. But after I've got it all in there, I'm just going to take a paper towel. I'm just going to wipe off that excess. I'm not really going to try to get down into the impressions or anything. I'm just kind of going across the surface, cleaning all that extra stuff off. And you can see that one really light coat of neat lac really did a good job resisting it and keeping that natural color. So after I've cleaned that off, you can see it's still real heavy down inside the background and everything. So what I like to do is take a piece of sheep's wool, and I'm just gonna lightly wipe over all this, kind of buff it out a little bit and clean up some of that excess from down inside there. You don't really want to let that dry in there because it can just be kind of, it'll just be kind of gunky looking, I think. Like, so this just kind of cleans it up. And you can really see the tone of that antique come out when you do this. So this wool, the fibers are going to get down into the cracks and all the impressions, and it's going to pull a little bit more antique out, clean it up a little bit better than just a paper towel would. So it's kind of getting down in the grooves a little bit more. But the main reason I like it is I found it, just like I said, once you kind of do that, it really kind of cleans up, like it spreads that highlight tone of that antique out throughout the whole belt, I think, a little bit better. Kind of works it into the surface of that leather a little bit, because I mean, you can see the tone of that leather change color really just by using this. It went from being really bright and really natural colored to kind of having a brown tint to it, and I really like the, almost looks oiled without actually oiling it. But and then it holds a lot of that antique on there also, so if there's a spot that you kind of want to, you know, get a little bit more antique in, you feel like it just pulled a little bit too much, you can kind of use it to spread more antique around a little bit too. That's pretty much it. I'll clean it up to the point where I like the color, I like the tone. There's not a lot of excess antique down inside the background or anything. And now we just really let this dry and let that antique soak in, and then once it's dry, we'll seal it all up, and then we can stitch it.